Hello,
Hi. Hi, Noreen. Hi, John.
Aaron.
Bruce.
Hey, Aaron, if Rachel joins, could you add her as a panelist also?
Yes. Did
Thank
you
you.
not get the invite?
I did, but then it wouldn't let me join as a panelist. The link like kicked me out.
Okay. Yeah. I got Peggy coming through too. Isn't that weird? We'll get it.
I think the IT people are still mad that I haven't returned my fob.
You still haven't.
No, it's actually I think I have one of the things that generates the code to let you VPN in. That's what I still have.
That's all right. We'll get you.
John, I haven't met you before. Are you on the Affordable Housing Committee?
I'm a consultant to the town.
You're a consultant to the town. All right, I'm one of the selectmen, Noreen Kokaruda. I see a couple other selectmen.
Yeah.
I see Carol Snow here.
Hello.
Hello.
And Sarah. Noreen, we're happy to do some either preliminary intros or intros once we all start, because we'll have 3 groups here tonight
Okay,
with
that'll
the
be fun.
Affordable
Yeah.
Housing Committee too. So, and John, are you going to screen share on the slide, or did you want me to pull it up?
Ideally, because we tweaked just a couple of little tiny things.
What's that?
Yes, we'll
You're
handle
good?
it. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Okay.
Hi,
We
everybody.
still only have one. Hi, Wendy. We still
Hi.
only have one zoning
I
commissioner.
know. I'm waiting patiently.
We can't quite open yet.
I think they're all coming.
I think so too. I have one phone-in listener who I'm not, I don't believe anyone's attending via phone, but we'll see.
I'm so proud of our housing group. Look how many of us showed up on time.
Good job. I see Giselle signing in.
Well, you've worked so hard. You
Hi,
should.
Giselle.
Hi, how are you?
There's Giselle. There's Peter, we got 3.
Hi, Peter, wearing 2 hats tonight.
And Scott's here too. I'll have him come over.
Hi, Noreen.
Hello. Hi, Wendy. Were you knitting yesterday? I saw you at the senior center.
No, I wasn't there actually, but I did knit yesterday, but at home.
I thought I saw you walking out with a group with a little bag in your hand yesterday.
Really? Yeah, maybe I have a double somewhere.
You have a double in town.
Yeah.
Dr. Hayes here and John. Hello.
Aaron, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good.
Okay, Heather made it. I think on P and Z, and we're just waiting for
Ron Bodenson.
Bodenson and Elliot. Right?
Elliot.
See Elliot, yeah. Oh, there's Ron. He's here. Okay, well. Well, Carol, we do have a quorum if you wanted to.
It's exactly 7 o'clock by my computer. So yes, will the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of Thursday, May 5th, 2022, please come to order. This meeting is live streamed on YouTube and will be made available on the town website for viewing. Present this evening so far, we have Ron Bodenson, Shona Hay, Elliot. Oh, sorry, is Elliot here yet?
Yep, he just.
Yes, Elliot's just coming. Perfect timing, Elliot. Elliot Hitchcock, John Mathers, Giselle McDowell, Peter Roos, and myself, Carol Snow. Staff present this evening is Aaron Mannix, town planner, who will now read the legal notice. Aaron?
There is no legal notice this
Hey.
evening because we have public hearings.
Okay, I didn't know if we had to do that without public hearings, because I think every meeting I've chaired, we've had them. So we have one good item on our agenda, the presentation of the draft affordable housing plan by the ad hoc Affordable Housing Plan Committee, and then discussion with the commission and our special guests, the Board of Selectmen. Welcome to all. Erin, you suggested that maybe we just take a moment to introduce ourselves.
I think that's a good idea.
Is that all right with everyone? And I'd like to say I'm Carol Snow, the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission. We're very grateful for all of you being here. And we look forward to the presentation. So how do we do this? We run through the planning and zoning alphabetically.
Sure. If we could do
Point to people.
alphabetical.
I can say names, and how about people raise hands? Ron Bodenson.
Hi, Ron Bodenson. I've been on the Planning Commission a few years.
Shona Hay.
Hi, I'm Shona Hay. Nice to see you all.
Elliot Hitchcock.
Hi, Elliot Hitchcock, Secretary of the Planning and Zoning Commission.
John Mathers.
Good evening, John Mathers, Planning and Zoning.
Giselle McDowell.
Evening, Giselle McDowell, been on the commission for a few years and happy to be a part of this.
Peter Roos, you're both on both committees, commission and committee.
Right. Hi.
And I'm Carol Snow, chair as of January, I guess it's been, right? So how about, can the draft affordable housing committee, ad hoc committee, introduce yourselves?
Go ahead, Sarah.
I'm Sarah Mervine. I'm the chair of a very long name, the Ad Hoc Affordable Housing Plan Committee. And should I just do the same thing, introduce people?
Sure.
So we have with us almost the whole committee. You already said Peter Roos, who is wearing two hats. We have Andrea Aaron here tonight.
Hi, I'm Andrea Aaron. I'm the liaison from the Madison Youth and Family Services Board to this affordable housing committee.
Thanks, Andrea. And we have Wendy Oberg.
I am Wendy Oberg from representing the Senior Commission.
And Matt Keller.
I'm Matt Keller. I'm a citizen volunteer.
And then we have Heather.
Hi, everyone. I'm the Assistant Director for the Madison Beach Recreation and Senior Center.
And we have our consultants as well. I will say, so we have John.
Hi, I'm John Guskowski. It's good to see the Planning and Zoning Commissioners again. I'm consulting with Tyche Planning and Policy Group.
And Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel Burstein. I'm a community development planner with Tyche.
And then I also should say we have Al wearing two hats because Erin Duquesne started as our Board of Selectmen liaison and then left the Board of Selectmen. So Al took over for her.
And just to add, we do have Chad Greenlee, who is a member of the committee as well, is unable to make it this evening.
Oh, no, he's here. I just saw the box. Yes.
Your name.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And Erin Duquesne is still on our committee, but not able to join us tonight. We also had Crystal DePietro, who was our staff person from Madison Youth and Family Services. And am I missing anyone? I think I've got everyone.
Great, thank you. And Selectmen, do we need to introduce you? I think most of us know.
I can do a quick, I'm Peggy Lyons, the first select woman. And I just want to also say it's impressive to see so many people dedicated to this topic and working on this through the town. And with us, we have Bruce Wilson, another fellow selectman, Noreen Kokaruda, and Al Goldberg, and Scott Murphy. So we have our full board here tonight to listen to this very important topic.
Great, thank you.
Sarah, did you want to give a brief introduction? Do you, John, would you like to just kick it off with your slideshow and we can go through everybody? We did provide you with a draft plan and we hope you've had an opportunity to at least skim through it ahead of tonight's meeting. I did hear back from several of you, so thank you for that, for your time in reading this. I think if we just get started, we can kind of go through the charge of the committee, specifically with respect to creating this plan. And John and Rachel have
Darren, can we just
slideshow.
I just want to say for the process, and so people understand how this, our committee has been together for about a year now. And we were lucky enough to have the SCROG who was helping us along. So you know, the other towns in our region are doing the same thing, and they had a consultant. We learned some valuable information from their consultants, but at a certain point we felt like Madison's its own town, and we felt that doing just the regional plan wasn't working exactly for us. One of the things that was really important to us was to hear from people from Madison. And I will say that we did 2 different surveys, and you'll hear about those. SCROG put out one of the surveys, and I'm happy to say that Madison had the most responses by far of any town, which percentage-wise is pretty impressive because we're one of the smallest. That told us people were at least very interested in this issue. And then we tried to do a second survey that was a little bit more Madison specific, hearing from people what they really were seeing, what they think about affordable housing, what they think we need and why, and where they might like to see it. So John and Rachel put together a lot of this data, and they're going to present that today, but I just wanted to give you a sense that we've sort of had 2 consultants helping us along on this process. I turn it to you, John.
Okay, sounds great. So hopefully this will be functional, and swap the display setting. All right, so can people see the presentation?
Yes.
Within presentation view? Okay. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Aaron. Thanks to all the planning and zoning commissioners and Board of Selectmen members who are participating this evening. We're going to go through a little bit of the affordable housing plan, both process and goals. But to start, however, I'm putting up on the screen basically the entirety of the state statute that requires every municipality every 5 years to prepare or update a plan to increase the number of affordable housing units in that municipality. So every town has to do this every 5 years. This law was passed in 2017. And so the first 5-year cycle is coming due basically as of June 1st of this year, just in a couple of weeks. So a lot of towns like Madison are sort of pulling things together in time to hit that deadline. The statute itself is very vague and very broad. And in fact, the only really relevant section is the top part that I've highlighted, is that the plan has to show how the town is going to increase the number of affordable housing units. There's no numerical threshold. There's no percentage threshold. There's no rubric on the types or density or numbers of housing units, just that there basically needs to be a plan for more. And the rest of the statute is basically, prescribing process if the town chooses to hold public hearings and public meetings about this. And the deadline, which again is June 1st of this year, if the town is unable to hit that deadline, all it needs to do is submit a letter to OPM, the State Office of Policy and Management, saying why it hasn't been completed and to give a potential target. So if for some reason the town of Madison feels like they need to take a little bit more time with this, that we want to go out to the public, there is an opportunity to do so. However, I do believe that this committee and the town has done a good and thorough job in putting together a plan. But the point here is that it's a very broad requirement and allows the town to kind of come up with its own process and approach. So that's the requirement that we're attempting to meet. But the topic of what is affordable housing, very simply put, it is housing that people can afford without spending more than 30% of their income on housing. And this could be ownership housing, it could be rental housing. And in either case, if people are spending more than 30% of their annual household income on housing, they're considered cost burdened. And that percentage is an all-in cost. If you're a renter, that includes rent, the heat, hot water, electricity. If you're an owner, that includes your mortgage, that includes taxes, as well as heat and other utilities. So that 30% threshold, if people cannot find suitable housing below spending that 30% threshold, they are cost burdened and housing is not affordable. To break that down a little bit, we consider in this plan two types of affordable housing. The capital A affordable, which we refer to as statutory affordable, is defined in a different section of the state statutes, section 8-30G, which is the Affordable Housing Appeals Act, which defines several categories which qualify to be counted as capital A affordable. And these are houses that are owner occupied and have received mortgage assistance or down payment assistance through CHFA or USDA federal state programs. If it's a rental situation that's been income restricted for a period of 40 years, or an incentive housing rental situation that's income restricted for 30 years. If it's government assisted, so basically housing authority for senior or disabled housing, or tenant rental assistance, which is classic Section 8 vouchers. And so all of those categories put together are counted by the state as capital A affordable, as statutory affordable. And if a community of all those categories does not have 10% of their overall housing stock within one of those categories, the town is subject to the Affordable Housing Appeals Act, which has been used a couple of times in Madison to sort of allow for a development to sort of bypass the traditional zoning pathway. It hasn't been used extensively in Madison, certainly not as much as it has in places like Fairfield or Greenwich, but it has been employed because Madison is still below that 10% threshold. So that's capital A affordable, and that is the big picture goal of the affordable housing plans. However, there is also a very important category, which we call small a affordable, or naturally occurring affordable housing, NOAH, which is basically expanded housing opportunities of all varieties that are just available to people making a little bit less than the average or typical income for Madison residents. And these could be accessory apartments, duplex units, studio apartments in multi-unit complexes, things that could be a backyard cottage or a unit above the garage. And it's basically just sort of units that are sort of organically out there that people can afford without being formally restricted. And these don't count towards the state totals, but it's a very important element for an overall housing opportunity picture in Madison or in any community. As we said, the state statutory requirement to come up with a plan is very broad, and there is a lot of a variety of approaches. Some towns, granted the fact that they are given a state mandate, you have to come up with a plan, have decided to do a very simple process, hire somebody, write the plan, check the box. Other people are taking it as a real opportunity. Other communities are taking it as a real opportunity to sort of examine the way they do things, the way they do their processes, or the way they think about creating opportunities for their neighbors. And I think this is where Madison has sort of come out on the scale. And Sarah, I think, described a bit, and Aaron described a bit of the process. This was an ad hoc committee to undertake this process created by the Board of Selectmen, and had broad representation from not only municipal staff and boards and commissions, but also members at large and stakeholders. It was coordinated through Aaron Mannix's office, as well as assisted by ourselves at Tyche Planning and Policy Group. And we ran this effort sort of parallel to SCROG, who was undertaking a regional planning effort, and provided some data and some survey and some good input to the town while the town was undergoing this process. But ultimately, the town decided to sort of have its formal plan independent of the regional process. And throughout this process, we held a very well participated public survey that we'll go through this evening, as well as forum and public education events. And I'm going to turn it over to Rachel to go through some of the data.
Yeah, so a pretty huge component of the plan's development and the process of writing the plan is incorporating and researching Madison's housing situation, as well as different population data that affects housing. So Madison, as we know, most of the housing stock is single-family residential homes. About 90% of the housing stock is one-unit detached homes. And just there's very few affordable housing units in town. Less than 2% of all housing units in Madison are affordable. There's about 90 government-assisted units, which is Concord Meadows. There are 3 tenant rental assisted units, a handful of single-family CHFA USDA mortgages, and 33 deed restricted units. In looking at the housing situation, we also are looking at, obviously, what is actually affordable in Madison and who is cost burdened in town. When residents are cost burdened, it means that they're paying 30% or more on their household income on housing costs. And in Madison, about 34% of the total population is cost burdened. And this limits how much money they can spend on goods in addition to their housing costs. So things like groceries and healthcare and childcare, educational expenses, those are limited by how impacted they are by their housing costs. And to get a better idea of like what an affordable unit would actually mean in Madison, we do kind of a calculation in that top table of area median income. And we use Connecticut's definition of affordable housing. 80% of area median income is considered a low income family when you're making that amount. And 30% of 80% of area median income is the maximum you should spend on housing costs. So broken down for Madison, that turns into, for a family of 4 renting a 2-bedroom unit, that comes out to $1,860 a month. Which seems maybe a little bit high to you, but it's also important to consider that this is a 2-bedroom unit we're talking about, and it's also a family of 4, and it's also in a place like Madison, which is very desirable and relatively expensive to live in for the area.
And again, that number has to include heat, hot water, utilities, not just rent.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. And in terms of cost burden in Madison, if we're looking at it between renters and owners in town, renters are significantly more cost burden than owners. About 65% of renters pay more than 30% or more of their household income on housing costs. Homeowners, also a good portion of homeowners are cost burden in town, with about 30% of all owners in Madison paying 30% or more of their income on housing. Another pretty big component of the plan is looking at Madison's population, both currently and what projections are telling us at present. Currently, in the last 10 years, Madison's population has been on the decline, and it's projected to continue to decline until 2030. And you can see in the right, it's projected to sort of remain stagnant in the following 10 years, but overall, we're seeing a decline. We also look at the population projections in terms of age groups, because obviously different age groups require really different housing needs and have different income levels usually. So in Madison's population, most residents are between 45 and 54 years old. A big portion of the population is middle-aged, as well as the 65 plus population is very large as well. And we have good amounts of younger population. The 10 to 14-year-old age range, 15 to 19-year-old age range is a pretty key group in town as well when it's all added together. And looking at 20-year projections for population, we're seeing the middle age group expecting a really large decline, and the 65 plus age group experiencing a potential increase. And this is likely from that huge middle age population basically aging into the 65 plus population in the next 20 years. So both these groups are pretty big, and they account for pretty important housing groups. As John mentioned, we did create and distribute a survey that was more Madison centric than the regional survey. And we got really good turnout from this survey. We got above 800 responses. We got pretty mixed answers, but we saw that a majority of Madison was in favor of affordable housing and affordable housing opportunities, and we're generally concerned with the cost of housing in Madison. And we asked them basically their opinions on if the town should have a role in providing that housing, which was about 50-50, and you could see a lot of people weren't sure, which definitely indicates that there is a lack of information about affordable housing in town. But there's a large amount of people in favor of the town taking some more responsibility there. We also asked about the impact that affordable housing would have on our community. And most people said that affordable housing would have a positive impact. It would make the community stronger. And then again, you can see the pretty good size unsure category. Another facet of this is asking residents about where they'd like to see housing and for whom they think housing is most needed. A lot of residents said that they'd like to see housing near basically transportation access. Most people said they'd like to see it near a train station, near a bus line. And then in terms of for whom you think housing units are most needed, people identified a lot of the key age groups that we probably assumed they'd recognize based on our population data. Providing housing for seniors, young families, and in-town workers were the top 3 that people selected. And I'll pass it back to John.
So the affordable housing plan, like any plan, is not a binding referendum, popular vote. So the public opinion is obviously a very, very important gauge of what public interest, what public education, and what public sentiment had for Madison. But it also, I think, as Rachel pointed out, also informed the committee that a lot of outreach and public education needs to happen, because there was a lot of uncertainty, not only about what affordable housing meant in general, but what its impact could be, what it looks like, who it serves in town. So I think one of the major takeaways is that some public education and outreach is critical. Another element that we investigated in the process of coming up with this plan is, what does the town say right now? What are the town's policies? What are the town's rules when it comes to creation of new housing opportunities? And led by your town planner, Aaron Mannix, we did a deep dive into your Plan of Conservation and Development, which is your primary land use policy document in town, as well as your zoning regulations. And again, I'm speaking to the Planning and Zoning Commission primarily, so obviously you know what those are about. And found a lot of areas, and we basically, a lot of areas in which the regulations were confusing, perhaps contradictory, different approaches to multifamily housing found in different portions of the regulation, and found a lot of opportunities to improve, clean up, streamline, or ease the regulatory burden. I think in certain things like accessory apartments, small cluster developments, and certainly the way that the town approaches multifamily development could certainly be streamlined. And so we sort of dug into these regulations. And I think it was probably a really well-timed investigation for Erin, as she was just sort of onboarding at that time and having to sort of dive deep into the regulations and understand how these things fit together. And she wasn't totally scared off. She's still here, which is a good sign. So taking all of that into account, we came up with a series of recommendations in basically 3 policy areas. And I would say that the overall goal statement for the Affordable Housing Plan very much reflects the overall purpose of the Affordable Housing Plan statute, which is that the town is very much interested in doing what it can to see an increase and to effectuate an increase in the amount of affordable housing developments throughout Madison. And so again, the actions to reach that goal are in 3 areas. The first is basically administrative improvements. How can we improve Madison's administrative systems to actively promote expanded housing opportunities? And we broke this down into a few actions. The first is to formalize this ad hoc committee, this Affordable Housing Plan Committee, into a standing housing committee that would be charged and would be permanent. And their charge would be to implement and to continue to coordinate across departments, to continue to coordinate across stakeholders, to see that the goals of the Affordable Housing Plan are carried out over the next 5 years and beyond. In addition to the committee, we'd want to make sure that there is someone at Town Hall whose job included affordable housing and understood how all of the different departments and different disciplines work together to push forward affordable housing. And in my short time assisting the town back last summer, we saw some of the challenges of this when we were looking at affordable housing transfers at West Sussex Village, which is an affordable townhouse complex, that there wasn't a single point of contact to sort of address questions about this. There was someone from the Selectman's office and someone from the Land Use office and someone from Senior Services. And it's very important to kind of get the town's administrative ship in order to make sure that, you know, if someone comes to a question, who do I talk to about housing, that there is an answer. And following on that the town website provides that information. So you don't have to call the town or stop by Town Hall to talk to somebody, but that information about resources, about programs, about regulations is freely available and readily available to people on the town website. That would include resources about affordable housing, transportation, which would include our 4th goal or our 4th action, which is promoting CHFA or USDA mortgages, which is a severely underused program in the town of Madison. I believe the number of current CHFA or USDA mortgages in town that Rachel went through was less than 10. I think it was 9, which in an extraordinarily overwhelmingly ownership occupied community, that number is incredibly low. And because, you know, that's how people can get into Madison, by buying. And these programs are out there that doesn't cost the town a penny to encourage people to take advantage of these programs and get into an ownership situation at a level that they can afford. And so promoting these among potential home buyers, particularly among the real estate community and lenders, can really boost the town's affordable housing numbers. Now, affordable housing is appropriate in many forms in many areas of town, but in terms of increasing concentrations of higher density developments, multifamily developments, there should be specific criteria. There should be an answer to the question, where in town should we be focusing our efforts? And we did not answer that question in this plan itself, but instead we pointed to the need to come up with these criteria on sort of a consensus basis, working particularly with planning and zoning and their initiative to update the plan of conservation and development, which I believe is upcoming shortly, to come up with these criteria for determining where in town would be most appropriate for higher density and broader housing opportunity. And then finally, in administrative policies, to work with the Estuary Transit District to expand access to public transportation. Because again, that probably beyond housing, transportation costs are a huge burden because Madison is not a huge employment hub. So many people that would be living in Madison would be commuting elsewhere. And if they have inadequate transportation opportunities, increasing the opportunities through the transit district would certainly ease that burden. The second category of, the second policy area that we recommended as a group was to make regulatory changes, basically work with you on planning and zoning to make revisions to the zoning regulations, to make it easier to build additional housing. And that would include things like consolidating and simplifying the many areas where the planning and zoning, the zoning regulations address different types of multifamily housing across different sections of the regulations, and kind of centralize those, streamline them, make them simpler, as well as increasing the opportunity for middle density housing, by which we mean, not large, 20 units to the acre, 30 units to the acre, but 2, 3, 4, 5 unit complexes as of right in specific areas, and certainly as part of larger historic home retrofits, because as we saw with an aging population, household sizes are getting smaller. But those historic houses, are very, very large. They remain quite large, and there's a mismatch between the size of a house and the number of people in it. And very often those houses, with very little effort and with really no major exterior or character change to the house, could be converted to be a multifamily and expand those housing opportunities. And so tweaking the regulations to make that a little bit more possible would be in order. Some of additional zoning changes that would be suggested would be to adopt inclusionary zoning, which is an enabling piece of legislation, statute section 8-2I, which basically allows the municipality to require, as part of any new housing development, whether it's a subdivision, whether it's multifamily, to set aside a percentage of those newly developed units to be affordable. So in similar ways to that, your Planning and Zoning Commission sets aside open space as part of a subdivision or accepts a fee in lieu, an inclusionary zoning regulation would allow you to require a portion of a development to be set aside for affordable or accept a fee in lieu. And as part of that setup, accepting that fee in lieu would go into a housing trust fund that could be used in a number of ways to promote affordable housing in town. And I believe last of the zoning recommendations is to modify your accessory dwelling unit or accessory apartment regulations to bring them into conformity with Public Act 2129. And I know this commission has discussed that and is intending to make some of those changes, which again, the state has sort of put its thumb on the scale in saying how it would like to see municipalities treat accessory apartments, which is to say, as of right, similar to the way they treat single-family residences. So this is ideally an easy victory that planning and zoning can claim over the next couple of months if it tweaks its regulations to come into conformity with the state. And then the third area of policy is to make investments from the town into expanding housing options. The first would be to take a look at excess municipal property or property that is owned by the town, is no longer needed, is not going to be a park, is not going to be a police station, is not going to be some other municipal use, and the town is looking to dispose of it or reuse it, that it should consider seriously the idea of creating housing opportunities on that, because one of the best ways the town can make something affordable is to use their own land, which is basically free, and work with developers to see that redeveloped. As we mentioned in the inclusionary zoning, that the town can set up a housing trust fund that can be used in a number of ways to promote affordable housing or to create affordable housing, but that does not need to be funded exclusively by developers who are paying a fee in lieu, although obviously that can be a major source of funds. But similar to the way the town makes investments in open space or in recreation opportunities, or in infrastructure, housing should be a priority of the community. And the way you express support for priorities is by investing town budgetary funds in it. And we did not make a specific dollar recommendation or a percentage recommendation, but that this should be a priority. It should be an ongoing budget item to make payments into a housing trust fund. And that can also include investing municipal time, staff time into seeking grants and providing matching funds to support housing improvements for lower property owners, or to seek partnerships with nonprofit groups that want to develop in town, and that the town should be an active partner and possibly even a financial partner to some of these development efforts, and basically spreading around the cost over several partners. And then finally, as we said, promoting the heck out of CHFA and USDA programs, because those are free of cost to the town. They dramatically increase the opportunity for people just below the area median income to move into Madison and to become part of the ownership community in Madison, and to expand that housing opportunity. And so those were the action items, but each of the action items, in order to be part of a plan, need to be actionable. And so we need to answer the question, whose job is this action item? Who can they find support from? And how long should this take? What is the priority? So for each of the action items, and we broke this down, each of the action items has a responsible party. So forming the housing committee, the first action item, is something that the Board of Selectmen should do. You should appoint it, you should charge them, and you should do this now. It should happen in the first year, and so on and so forth. And we assigned responsibility and supporting responsibility and timeframe to each of the action items. And so this is a true trackable plan for that housing committee to now run with and implement over the course of the next 5 years. So I'll stop and take a break, take a breath. That is, in a nutshell, the plan. I believe the plan has been shared with the commission, with the board, on the town website, with the public, with the hundreds of people, I believe, Aaron, who, as part of the community survey, signed up, added their email and said, yes, I want to know about affordable housing. So we have that list of people, and I believe the plan has been shared with them as well. Hopefully we get some good feedback, and ideally look for the municipality to adopt it before June. That's it.
Thanks, John. Yes, that's correct. We did have over 200 respondents as part of the survey process submit their email addresses and want a request to be updated on any happenings regarding affordable housing. And so we did work with IT and create an affordable housing listserv that you can sign up on the town's website. And we have been keeping that group up to date, sharing the plan and all of our meeting updates since we got that started. So I guess at this point, we'll open it up for discussion. If anybody had any questions, any specific sections or any feedback. Sure, Peggy.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, thank you so much for this excellent body of work. I know it has been a challenge. It's a big topic. It's a hot potato, so to speak. And I appreciate the volunteers working on the Affordable Housing Committee, and then also town staff. And John, I think everybody really pulled together. It was a difficult deadline. We were kind of slow to start this process. And then I think you came to getting something that's practical and pragmatic. I think a takeaway that I had when I read this was, there's no silver bullet to solve this problem, right? This is going to be a series of actions and efforts over a long period of time that the town needs to take to create true change. So there's not like one policy or one way to solve this problem. It's going to be a multitude of factors. And I think you laid that out very well in terms of, what the action items that the town could be taking. One of the things that's not in the plan necessarily, you talk about it, and this is maybe a question for the committee, is that overall goals and objectives, kind of the soft goals, like why are we doing this in the first place? We know we have a regulatory requirement to do the plan, but I think also there is a desire by the community to address this issue. And so I was just curious, and maybe this is something that is really the role of the Board of Selectmen to do, or what will come out of the Plan of Conservation and Development as we work on it over the next year, trying to really lay out in a bigger way why this is good for the community in the long run to do, rather than checking a box. This sets us up for success in the future. right? So, and that may not be what appropriate for this. It might be something that planning and zoning needs to consider when it does its plan of conservation and development. But that was something where this is really more, you know, a lot of strong information and identifying the issues. And it doesn't necessarily talk about some of those longer term objectives and goals. And so that was something I just wanted to throw out there. And it might be something that we deal with on the planning and zoning side with the POCD. And then one other thought I just had from a community absorption standpoint is some sort of executive summary. Because it is, I read the whole thing and it reads well and it's very explanatory and a lot of really good information. But as we all know, the public has a very short attention span at times. And so having that 1 or 2 pager, and I know there was like a fact sheet that had been put together at one point about our housing statistics. So maybe just having like a 2-page executive summary, you know, or something like that, so that we could roll that out and use that just to educate people. And then it'll kind of tease them into wanting to look at the plan further possibly. So those were kind of just some of my quick takeaways when I read it. There's a lot to absorb, so I know I'll have to read it again and think about it. And I loved all the ideas, and a lot of them covered in a more specific way some of my big questions about things, you know. So, and I saw it's like tactical, which is great. It's like a tactical guideline that's going to take time. And I like how you have the timeline too. Is this a 1-year thing? Is this a 3-year thing? Or is this a long-term thing? So, so those were my kind of initial comments. So I just wanted to share them with everybody.
I just want to respond and say, I really appreciate it. And I think the first part of your question was sort of the education piece, or the, you know, why are we doing this and what does Madison think it needs? And I think we got off to a slow start with that because of COVID. We have some really excellent speakers. We did have David Fink, who did a forum, and it was a Zoom forum, and we had good attendance, and our thought was to put it out again and to, you know, forward it. But the thought of sending out a Zoom link to people and saying, watch this, just didn't seem like the right thing. In the beginning, Peter and I had met with the library, and this is when we thought we were going back to in-person any day. And they were excited to have a series of these. And David Fink can make himself accessible, as can we. I think the members of the committee have been well educated now on this issue, and could host some of the forum and talk about some of the numbers, you know, the 1.68% of affordable housing that we actually have in this community, and talk about what we have and how the tiny bit that we have is so successful, and how the wait lists are so full. Inevitably, when you have these forums, what I find is that people say, you know, I could really use that housing. There's always someone who comes up or says, you know, I know somebody, or my friend just got divorced and they could really use that housing to stay here. So I think the more of those we have, the better. But you're right, we haven't written that into the plan, that this is something we should be doing. And I think it absolutely is. As far as the executive summary, I love that idea. And I think perhaps that 1 page, I actually just did a little summary myself of the 3 main goals and how those goals fit together. And maybe even a graphic. I think that would be like a great thing on the front, you know. And so maybe I feel like that's something even we could put together. We don't have to make John do all the work, but I think that would be helpful for people to see, 1, what our community is saying, 2, where our community really is, and 3, also what the price of affordable housing. I don't know if you caught that, but you know, $1,800 affordable housing is still quite expensive in Madison, and so what it might look like. So I appreciate that a lot.
And let me be absolutely clear, it'll be Rachel doing the work.
I actually realized, Rachel, I apologize. I said that. I was like, didn't Rachel do all the graphs? And so I have
terrible.
That's okay.
I've been there. I'm sorry.
John did a little bit too.
Well, I had the pleasure of serving as liaison from the Board of Selectmen to this committee. And I wonder, Peggy, you've asked a very thoughtful question. I wonder if some of our Affordable Housing Committee members might share their views as to why this is important for Madison. I guess I'm asking you to be an advocate for a minute.
Well, one reason is that the workers that we rely on so heavily, particularly, in the last couple of years, often can't afford to live here. And I think our first responders, the folks who work at Stop and Shop, some of the folks who are maybe paras in schools, these are the kinds of people we want to be in this community. And I think it's really important for the long-term health of the town to have folks who actually serve the community to be able to live here. And I think we have an obligation to do that. We have an obligation to, as a relatively wealthy town, to open it up to those folks who desire it, who can add enormous value. And I think that we've done that in this report. And I would like to say thanks to John and Rachel, who've done an enormous amount of work and just presented it really well on our behalf. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, this is Peter Roos. I would also add that this will enable young families to move to town as well. I mean, so you go to college, you get your first job, maybe you want to come back to Madison, but you're shut out. I think that would be a big help. It also gives seniors a chance to downsize too. We forget that part of it as well. I think those are two other advantages. You think about teachers, for example. I mean, how many teachers can afford to live in the town they teach our kids? Coming from California, that was a huge problem. Some of these teachers drove 50 miles just to come teach our kids. And this is an opportunity for them to become more part of the community beyond just being teachers. They can be part of the community, part of the fabric of it. So I think those are all real, they're tangible, but they're all, and they're subtle in some ways too, but it creates a greater sense of community in my mind.
May I just add something to really what Matt said and Peter? I've talked to many people over the years that are dealing with an elderly parent. And when you show us the demographics of what group is really getting larger and larger, it's the caregivers that we really have no place for the caregivers to live. A lot of them don't have cars. And I had more people call me worried they couldn't stay, they didn't live in Madison, but they needed they found someone to take care of their mother, but she had no place to live. There's so few opportunities. And they actually were going to let the caregiver live there permanently. And the woman was threatened losing some of her aid or state aid or whatever. But I think that's what, as our population is aging, we're going to really be looking for an army of people to keep people in their homes. So I think this is right up. I think this is so timely. Like Peggy said, there's a lot of interest in it. And, we don't want to be pushed to have to do this 830G. I mean, we just never get ahead that way. But I'll tell you, but this plan, I read the whole thing too. I was very impressed. And we've got some work to do. I think we all know it. One of the plans that came out of Hartford called for 1,400 more units. I'm sure you saw it. 1,300 or 1,400 more units to get our number of affordable up to where it should be. I don't think any of us can imagine that much construction in our town or reconstruction. So we've got to be proactive. And I think you folks certainly took the first steps for us. And I thank you.
I'd like to add to what's being said, if that's okay. Peggy, I agree with all your points, and I think this is incredibly good timing. And yes, I'm really excited to have this all incorporated into the revised plan of conservation and development. I think it would be great, John, from your perspective. I do have a question. If you could maybe give us, is there a community in Connecticut or elsewhere that's doing a really good job with affordable housing that could serve as a model?
Sorry, but I have to say, we asked that question over and over again. Show us a town in Madison. John, you've worked in so many. Show us a town that's doing this really well. And I think maybe one day in the next few years, maybe people will be saying Madison, because I don't mean to talk poorly about the towns around us, but I think it's a problem in Connecticut. It's a problem all over, but John, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, the answer is there a town that has sort of solved affordable housing? The answer is absolutely not. But I think, the fact that, I mean, Connecticut is one of the most racially and economically segregated states in the country. And our system of local home rule, local control over land use has sort of has created that condition.
Yep.
And so there really isn't a town, that Madison can point to that is like, yes, let's emulate what they do. I think there are examples of good policies, good practices, good developments in a variety of different towns that we can take pieces of, but I think it's kind of a fool's errand to find the champion in Connecticut. They're like projects like a couple towns down the road in Old Saybrook, Ferry Crossing, and Essex Station, Essex Junction, I forget what it's called, but
Spencer Crossing.
Oh, that's in Essex. Spencer's Crossing. And actually, a lot of these, the common element of a lot of those is those are all Hope Partnership projects, and Hope Partnership is now working on projects in Madison. And what they've successfully done is not only find ways to finance and build these programs in very nice and pretty exclusive communities, but also do them in a way that is gorgeous and fits beautifully into the fabric of the community, and sort of paves the way for understanding of what this resource is, what this need is, and demystifies, it's I mean, Essex Junction or Spencer's Crossing or Spencer's Corner in Essex. Those are beautiful developments with people that are contributing to the community. And so, there's nothing to fear here. There is something to be embraced. So yeah, there's elements, but we're all towns are in the same boat, or maybe in individual boats, but in the same storm. And we're all kind of figuring it out together.
I want to jump in here too, John, because you mentioned the Wellington here in town, and I have the privilege of serving on Hope's board. And, we got some very good news last Thursday where the state has awarded us our long-term incentive tax credits for the Wellington, as well as our Department of Housing loan. And so our financing is now basically in place for that project to get off the ground. It probably dollars won't get funded until the fall. So maybe we break ground around that time. That's to be determined a bit, but it's just fantastic news because that project will now get built. And that will bring on 31 units, 24 of which will be affordable, 7 will be market rate. And they'll look largely like what you see now of the 4 units that are there. And you're right, they're very nice.
And that can serve as a model, I think, for other projects. It'll be great.
That's outstanding, Peter. Congratulations.
Do we have a sense of what percentage we would become? We're at 1.68% right now. Given this new project, would we elevate to, I don't know, 3% or?
No, Scott, that would take us to like the 1.9. We won't see.
Well, there you go.
Goal is 10% to avoid 830G.
All right.
We won't see 830G in our lifetimes getting over 10%. That's not going to happen. What you really want to do is start yourself on a continuum where that number gets to 3%, 4%, because, and John can speak to this better, but the reality is if you can show improvement on that goal, you can also fend off 830G developments. At least you have a shot at it. If you're doing nothing, then you're pretty much at risk.
And actually that project, Peter, it's a great project, and our board, supported the tax as abatement. I'm forgetting.
Abatement.
Yeah,
about
abatement for it.
$680,000.
And that was one thing I also wanted to just mention maybe in the plan is highlight some of the good things that the actions that the town has already taken, that we have an ordinance that allows to do that. Some of the tools that we have to offer, projects, and maybe just having some sort of in that plan so we can highlight that we have this abatement plan. Other things that we might highlight, I was thinking about the senior tax freeze, there's other things and our other senior tax relief programs as well. So just maybe highlighting some of the positive things that the steps that the town has taken in the past to assist us going forward, just so it's part of the overall comprehensive discussion of policy.
I'd also like to just follow up on questions about public outreach. And I think the sooner the commissioners can appoint a housing committee, the better. And then I can see, how great it would be if a number of us collaborated and, and kind of as a team reached out to do more sort of education and public outreach, not just putting all the burden on, say, planning and zoning or on the housing commission, but to say, I think it will take a whole team of us or, members, representatives from each organization that is relevant to do that. But I think the sooner we can get going on that too, the better.
I think that's right. I think this is also just a start, and there are some good ideas here. There's also some things we haven't tapped into, and we've sort of alluded to them here. Our neighbors, Guilford, they have a housing authority. They have different things that they're doing. And when we first started, we invited them in to talk to us about what they were doing and how they were doing it. And they were very excited to talk to us. And I'm not saying that we have to do a project together, but there are a lot of avenues we haven't explored. And I think you're right that having some point people who would just, especially somebody in the town who's doing that, I think that would just be a natural way for people to start talking about it and thinking of ideas. And also for these partnerships that we're talking about with nonprofit developers, for them to know that we believe in this, will make them come to us, because some of the things that are available, they know about, and they can navigate a lot better than we can.
I was a little surprised when we were talking about a town that we could emulate, and I was expecting someone to say Guilford, because we've been hearing for years some of their projects and all. One of the things I didn't totally understand until today was when a town wants to do this and really wants to do a whole development, not just, not the 830G, the 30%, wants to do it. Normally what you saw was that they go to work with a partnership with a not-for-profit group and do it that way. And then the state and federal money goes through the not-for-profit, not through the town. How does that work? I was wondering how Madison could be proactive with like a Concord Meadows. Do you ever do something like that again? And that's, that was a group of churches, I believe, that got together to do that. But that would be the way to do it instead of 3 here and 6 here, But I don't know if it does town. Did you come across a town that did that on their own?
So you mean a town that's done something like Concord Meadows, which was this interfaith effort, the seed money with USDA? I don't know, John, and town. I mean, I certainly know towns that have done it, but not Connecticut. Do you know that have done a big scale?
I don't know how large scale. I know, I mean, years ago, when I worked in the Hartford area, the West Hartford Interfaith Housing Coalition was quite active in funding and supporting housing developments. Whole partnership isn't truly faith-based, but it's, nonprofit mission-driven organizations are certainly common. It's been a while since I've dealt with a lot of faith-based organizations.
That's how you would suggest, if we were going to take some steps to do this, once we have all some of these other things formed, would be to join with a partnership of an organization, and that would be the best way to go?
I think it's if you could make it clear to all sorts of mission-driven organizations that the town is a willing partner on things like, as Peggy mentioned, providing property tax abatements,
right,
or possibly if the town was going to do some of the other things like setting up a housing trust fund to actually put some skin in the game to support a development effort, and possibly some of the other things like with excess town property to make that available. And in so doing, if the town is an active, tangible partner, an objective partner, that would increase the town's rating and ranking for low-income housing tax credits and things like that. So if the town clearly supports a project, done by a mission-driven developer or whatever, it stands a greater chance of being funded, and then therefore happening.
Thank you.
I have a comment.
I guess I'm curious, do these affordable communities, and even just the nature of the study that you guys just did, is the intent to drive, senior retention, or is it to drive sort of the youth and affordability of the youth? Is there sort of an end game here, or is it an and, not an or?
An and.
Yeah.
I think it was an and. We want to be able to include, anybody that would really like to live here, to be able to afford to live here.
And it
isn't just to keep the seniors in town or just to us, everybody,
It's a sustaining cycle too, because as you create, downsizing opportunities, in smaller houses, possibly that would appeal to seniors, then the seniors are leaving their larger houses that then USDA mortgages, CHFA mortgages could then support for younger families to move in. So it's, there's a turnover, a cycle.
Going back to Wellington, I don't think we can, from a planning and zoning point of view, I don't think we can overemphasize enough how important it is to get Wellington built and occupied as Exhibit A and what can be done in Madison. What I think maybe a lot of people forget is Wellington was going to be an upscale condominium development at the front door of Windermere. And it got 1/5 built and failed. And then the developer tried to find a way out. And the way out was selling it to a not-for-profit for affordable housing. So the whole zoning and rezoning and planning for public hearings, no one showed up because it was an upscale condominium development. My first meeting on planning and zoning was the conversion to affordable housing, and no one showed up, okay? And then for the next, about a year later, people in Windermere would say, oh my God, there's affordable housing out of our front door. Well, so what? It's gonna get built. Notwithstanding the survey we had and 50% in favor, when these are promoted and they come to us as P&Z, there's gonna be neighbors very much against it for one reason or another. And if we can have Wellington as Exhibit A successful, I think it'd be big help. It got there through the back door, and it may not have gotten there if it had started out as affordable housing 5 years ago. I don't know.
I agree. I think that's probably, you're exactly right. And I think some people are still, they use the term low income housing, and that has gotten more of a negative connotation to it. And it's so good that we're using the term affordable housing and sticking with that and emphasizing the beautiful communities that have been built right in Old Saybrook and in Essex, and as examples. And the Wellington would be another perfect example. Madison.
Part of the education that, this next group would do is to use all of those terms: affordable housing, low income housing. That's what it is. And we talked in the beginning about calling this workforce housing or not calling it affordable housing. And I really believe the more we use the words correctly, this is affordable housing. And if your income is shrinking, then you are low income and we want you to have a house. And it's interesting, somebody said something about paraprofessionals. My oldest, who's in high school, her teacher sat down with them one day and showed them what the average price of a house was in Madison, what the lowest price was, what he made. He was very honest, what he was getting weekly, why he couldn't afford to live in Madison. And, you know, he was a teacher who'd been teaching for about 4 years, but he wasn't married and it was just his income. I think the more we educate people about how these communities have priced out so many people, and the more they see the Wellington and Concord Meadows, quite frankly, has been around for a long time, and neighbors aren't complaining about that. They just don't know and they don't see these places. So
Right.
Anybody else?
Anyone from the Planning and Zoning Commission with questions or comments?
I actually have a question. I saw that part of what you're proposing is that we adjust some regulations around accessory dwelling units and multi-family housing, which seems like a great idea, but I could see that potentially what could happen is some of those big houses, you know, the ones that would be pretty easy to divide up, might be divided up into like beautiful luxury apartments, which in no way end up being affordable. And similarly, people could build lovely little cottages on their land, which similarly may actually really be out of reach for many of these people that we're really hoping to attract and keep in town. So I'm just curious how we sort of think through that, because if we loosen regulations without maybe putting other you know, other parameters in place, we might not end up with a housing stock that we're really trying to achieve here.
Right. I think one thing that would help is how we define diversity in our housing stock. Because, you know, in my short tenure on the Planning and Zoning Commission, we've had developers come to us saying that they're going to diversify the stock by building more $1 million condominiums. And so
they're a little bit smaller.
So I think that is something maybe through the regulations we could clarify. I don't know, Erin, do you think?
I think we could do a lot of clarification in the regulations.
We've talked about cleaning up the regs, and this is actually another stimulus to do it.
I agree. I think this is a great start where we're calling out ahead of the POCD planning process some of the goals for affordability and diversity. And as we proceed through POCD, we'll get more feedback from our community. And we may find that some of the goals that we had in the 2013 plan are changing.
Mm-hmm.
And so once we establish what these new goals should be, then our next step is going to look to our tools, our zoning regulations, and we'll get started revamping those to help implement these goals. So we could keep you busy for a few years on making this work, for sure.
Can I ask a question about the POCD process? Is there is that totally run by the Planning and Zoning Commission, or is there like a separate committee that's set up for the POCD that has non-commission members? I just don't know how that works going forward.
Sure. So it's a planning document. So under the planning statutes, the commission has the responsibility of updating and maintaining their plan at least every 10 years. Previously, and as part of the 2013 plan, there was a working group of stakeholders, various representatives from a variety of commissions and other facets through town, including public members. And so there was a working group. This is a very public, you know, we want community input in this plan. This is our, you know, the town's plan. So yes, that is something that we'll get into, you know, this, because of the scale of the project as well, we will be having a consultant on board to help with that outreach and plan preparation. And likely we'll be establishing that committee as well, again, to help them.
Just thinking as we move forward, then obviously the affordable housing committee would be part of that working group, and
absolutely, and, sure, a representative. Yeah. Yes, that would be ideal. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
And Erin, am I correct that the final document has to be approved by the Board of Selectmen?
It's a planning and zoning commission document. No, it does not have to be adopted by the Board of Selectmen.
Which leads me to another question about this affordable housing plan. That does have to get adopted, right, by the Board of Selectmen, or it's kind of vague in the regulation, right? So, so I guess the thought process was that we would adopt it, but maybe talk a little bit about that. So, because this is a planning and zoning meeting, and so we're getting feedback from planning and zoning, right? The committee is. Maybe if you could talk through the steps, because I'm a little gray about, I know we have a public hearing coming up and somehow we have to adopt this, the town does. So. Your steps.
John, did you want to speak to that or do you want me to?
Sure. So yeah, as you say, Peggy, the statute is a little bit vague. It just says the town or the municipality shall prepare or update and adopt. There's really no specific guidance on what the municipality means. And I think OPM and the Department of Housing has basically just accepted the plans adopted by basically an entity from the community. And they've accepted it, adopted by planning and zoning, by Board of Selectmen, by town meeting, by town council, as long as I think really only one entity is standing up for the town saying, we represent the town, we prepared this plan, we adopted this plan, here you go, OPM. OPM is fine with it. So, Old Saybrook adopted it at town meeting. And Clinton will adopt it by town council. The Durham and Middlefield adopted by Board of Selectmen. The little town of Hampton, where I helped, adopted by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So, and all of them were accepted by the state.
Okay. I mean, I think the way we've done the schedule this month for May is that the Board of Selectmen would be adopting it after the public hearing. But I think that one of the things that the board will have to talk about, though, is the natural thing is to adopt it, but then hand it off to a permanent committee. That would be the Affordable Housing Committee. So just thinking through, and that's obviously, you said, one of your more urgent recommendations. And then that committee would then be a good, coordinating and with the working group for the POCD and things like that. Okay, that's helpful just for our board members to understand what we'll be doing over this month.
Yes, logistically, the board did, my understanding, the board decided to have the public hearing process, which is not required, but a great opportunity to receive additional feedback. And so in accordance with that, we have posted the plan for public comment 35 days ahead of the public hearing date, which is May 23rd at 6 o'clock. And so we will do another presentation on the plan, receive public comment, and then, yes, the goal is to hopefully have the board adopt the plan following that public hearing.
So I think then if we want to make some changes based on the conversation tonight, we could adopt the plan, but with the ability to make amendments to the plan going forward. Right? I mean, I'm just trying to think this through, and maybe I'm getting into minutia here, but I just want to make sure that we, there's a lot of suggestions and conversations about things we'd like to add to this or improve. So the question is, do we try to do that all now before we go to the public hearing, or do we try to at least stick with what is a sound document and then take it and amend it, moving forward after we adopt it? I guess I'm throwing it out as a question, and maybe John would have a better view on that. I mean, this isn't a static document. I guess I look at this as kind of the first step, right? The plan, and that it will evolve. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out if we adopt this, we send it to the state, we can still amend and change it as we want, right? We're not locked into some document, are we?
Oh, of course, right. And I'll give you the example of Essex. Essex did adopt theirs in 2019. They were one of the first towns to adopt an affordable housing plan. They're updating it now, less than 3 years in.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, and I think if I am right, John, that we file this plan. And then there's no one looking and saying, well, you said you were going to have X, but you didn't do that. And now you're adding Y. This is, I think, a plan, the way you give your kids something so that you get them started on the road, right? And so I think we've just started on the road. And so like your idea to have a 2-page executive summary is a great idea. That doesn't have to be part of the plan. It can be in front of the plan as a preamble. You know, there are things that we can do, but I guess I would hope to see us not get hung up so that, because I know Erin has been counting back the days of, I would rather us file it on time because that's just my personality. So,
well, and I think the reason I raise this is that if we will get some views from the public. And so I think I don't want the public to feel that they're not being listened to if what they see is adopted doesn't reflect their, thing. So to understand this is going to be continuing to evolve over time. And this is just kind of the first draft, so to speak, of this.
Right.
And listen, we're Madison. We're going to exceed expectations.
All right. Like the Chicago Cubs.
Right. Easy.
All right, great, thanks. Well, I want to thank the committee again for all their hard work and a beautiful report. And I hope it does take on some kind of living document status that we continue to update and improve. And we're happy to work with you in any capacity that makes sense. So we're looking forward to that.
Carol?
John, yeah.
May I, and I don't want to prolong this meeting, but I do just want to take a moment and echo those who have already commented about the importance of the education component of all this, and if or a public relations campaign perhaps to educate, because I found some of the report to be pretty startling. First of all, I was pleased to see that the majority of people are in favor of a plan, but if you look, it was a large percentage of people that were not in favor of a plan. Mm-hmm. And the majority of people felt that a plan would strengthen our community, but a startling large percentage of people felt it would weaken our community. And to me, that just illustrates the ignorance out there of what an affordable housing plan is. Mm-hmm. And when you think that 34% of our residents are house burdened, extrapolate that into the future. What happens to properties if the owners of those properties can't afford to live there? The properties continue to degrade, and it's going to have an impact on our entire community. Ron made a good point, and I think it's true that anytime in my tenure with the P&Z, anytime a project came before us or with a public hearing involving affordable housing, there was great opposition to that project. People, not in my backyard. I don't want affordable housing in my backyard because people don't really understand what affordable housing is. And they need to understand that it's for the police officers and the school teachers and the people that we want living in our community. So I think we need to put some effort into making sure that people understand what this is all about. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, John. Any other questions or comments?
Super appreciative.
Thanks.
Thank you all again.
Thank you.
We have, I guess that could conclude our presentation portion. And if you're all welcome to stay, clearly, if you're very interested in general comments from our
closing remarks.
Otherwise, thank you. And we'll at least ask our P&Z members just to remain on for another few minutes so that we can go through some logistics of upcoming meetings. But John and Rachel, thank you. And thank you to the board for joining us, and of course the committee for all your efforts.
Thank you.
Let's do this more often.
It is kind of efficient.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks for all the hard work.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay.
Okay, on to remarks.
What were we gonna say, Carol?
Yeah, we had talked about it. Does anyone have any other announcements or comments or? No.
On,
Okay,
on
great.
anything, Carol? On
Yes,
anything?
I would say
Yes.
let's open it up to anything.
Okay, I just was going to pass on. I think some people already know that after the next P and Z meeting on I guess it would be the 19th, that will be my last meeting. I'm stepping down from P and Z.
Oh. Well,
I didn't know that.
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, me too.
We are very sorry to lose you, Peter.
Yeah, and Peter and I did not collude on this, but the same goes for me. The next meeting will be my last as well. Having served, I think, for 7 years now, it's just become a little more difficult. I had planned to submit my resignation earlier in the year, but I didn't want to get caught up in some of the turmoil that the commission was going through at the time, and didn't want my decision to be misconstrued in any manner.
Yeah, and I agree with John. I felt the same way. Plus the Affordable Housing Committee, I wanted to see that through. So that's why I've waited as well.
Do we have to accept their resignations?
I
or can we
know.
just sort of indentured servitude in any way?
So the Board of
Please.
Selectmen.
The process goes through the Board of Selectmen.
It is
And-
clearly a loss, and as you can all see, our numbers are low, but we do value all of you who are here. And I know there were some concerns as far as continuing business with our current number. So as of our first meeting in June, we will have 5 regular members of the board and all of the Democratic Party. I did consult with our land use attorney, and we went through the statutes, and we are okay for minority representation at this point. Our current, our total membership, we do have a larger size commission with 9 regular members. And so the maximum number of representatives from one party is 6. So at 5, you are compliant. I would just urge you all, as far as moving forward, if you are unavailable to make a meeting, to please at least try to give us some advance notice so we can continue business. So far, we thankfully have a little bit, knock on wood, a little bit of a lighter load over the next month so far, with not a lot of new receipts. But there, we did try to urge the Board of Selectmen and parties to try to expedite filling some of these vacancies. So, and then another thought that we've been tossing around is perhaps encouraging the board to reduce the number of members of the commission. Madison is rather large. As far as the total membership, 9 regular members and 3 alternates. Many municipalities have a regular membership of 7 members and 2 alternates. So that's something that perhaps, if you have any feedback you want to share with us, your opinion of what you think of that, it may help fill the board a little quicker to reduce our numbers. And again, it's fairly consistent with the rest of the state and neighboring municipalities. So I'm not sure if anybody had feedback. You don't have to comment today, but if you think of something, feel free to.
Just a question. If you go to 7, for example, what does that do for the minority representation number? Does that drive it down from 5?
Yes, it
It
does.
is to 5, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's sort of a chart of how that
Yeah,
works.
yeah, I saw it too. I wasn't sure in that chart if it meant actually seated members or the capacity of the board. It's obviously the 9 at this point.
Yeah, it's the
Yes,
capacity.
and that was the main point of calling Ira and checking in with that.
Confirming.
The charter is silent and the ordinance is silent as far as party representation. So we would use section 9-167A of the statutes for that.
Cool.
All right, just a point of clarification, just to be practical moving forward. if we just have 5 members, can any of us be absent and still pass? No, we all have to be
Yes,
present. in
quorum
order.
would be 4.
Oh, quorum is 4.
Yeah.
So we could
4?
have 1 person absent.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So you do have flexibility there.
So much flexibility. Yeah, that's great.
Not much, just a little bit.
I know I have some plans.
Yeah, I think, summer's coming, right? Everybody's going to start taking vacations and
Yeah.
just practically.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be good if you know of dates that are going to be problematic, to let us know as soon as possible, even if it's way off.
Sure. And then at least we could try to adjust, if we have hearings and things
Or
like
put
that.
more-
And hopefully we'll get, a couple like additional members.
Yeah, and put more pressure on getting vacancies filled. So,
Although I like the idea of making John and Peter stay. That seems like a very reasonable alternative.
yeah, I don't know what they're thinking, but I do want to say though, to both of you, thank you so much for all that you have done for the commission over the years. I don't know what the combined number of years is, but we will miss you for sure, and your expertise and your experience.
It's been very rewarding. It's been a good commission to work on, and I've learned a lot. I remember, when I first joined the commission, I used to sit there thinking, I have no idea what these people are talking about.
Yeah, I'm there.
Now that I've finally figured it out, I said, I don't want any part of it. No, the commission, I think, really does well when the meetings are run well. And Carol, I think you're doing an excellent job with that. And it's also, I think the commission operates well with the advice of the professional staff. And Aaron, I thought Dave Anderson left big shoes to fill, but you've done a great job of filling them.
I agree.
Thanks.
Couldn't agree more.
You guys aren't making it easy.
One thought is, Peter, you really had a great ad hoc committee, and I was impressed with the people who participated tonight. Are any of them sitting around wanting something else to do and might want to be on the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Yeah, I don't know. I think, Ron, I can't answer the question. Yeah. Some of those people will probably migrate to the town committee for affordable housing, though, I would guess.
Housing committee, yeah.
Sure, but maybe we can slip in and make them an offer. Think about it.
I'll see what I can do.
Okay, dude.
They're all Democrats.
Oh no!
I was going to say, I'm not sure they're going to get diversity of
I don't know. I'm not
political party.
No comment.
So, and I guess lastly, I just wanted to update you all. The governor did sign a bill at the end of last week allowing the remote meetings to continue through December. And I think we can, at this point, both of our meetings in May are going to be remote. And just some feedback, if you have a desire to go back into person, my goal, if you are in person, is to have a hybrid ability. Because I think at this point, it's been really nice to be able to have that offered to the public for additional participation. And we have made some changes during COVID with putting our applications online and additional access through Zoom. And I hate to lose some of that, because I do think that helps with transparency of what's coming through the commission and projects, and especially as we get into the POCD, to try to allow as much public involvement as possible. That being said, there are some challenges a little bit with technology and having videographers available who were not typically scheduled for the first meeting of the month. So I'm working out kinks, and I'm happy to accommodate virtual through June. And that buys us a little time before we get back into person. But I know, Shauna, you had some concerns about being in person, but this could provide that hybrid opportunity if there is a desire from the rest of the commission to return in person. And let me know if you don't want to do that and you'd prefer to be just virtual. for an amount of time. Whether it's through the end of the year, or if you want to play it by ear a little bit. We have a little time. I guess tonight I would prefer if you gave me some feedback for June, and then we can think it through for the rest of, whether it's a little bit of a hassle with advertising for public hearings. We have to have those notices at least 3 weeks in advance from the hearing. So on a month-to-month basis, it's a little challenging in the office to figure out if we're going in person versus virtual. So I think at some point we want to make a hard decision.
Virtual has certainly enhanced the public participation.
Yep.
No question about
so.
that, which I think is great. The other thing is it's I think people tend to be a little more civil, because when you've got that room, room A, I think it is at the
fishbowl.
when that's packed with angry people, they just feed off one another. It's gonna get, but when it's virtual and it's one person speaking at a time, I think it was a little more manageable.
I agree. I think virtual works really well for this, actually. I really think the ability of the public to participate, I think, quite frankly, us being able to do it from the comfort of home is very nice. I don't see a big downside to virtual, except just not being able to see you guys in person. But I'm all for continuing it, especially since I've personally had a significant uptick in the number of COVID positive patients I've had in the past week. I'm a little bit worried we might be this new BA.2.1 or whatever the last number is seems to be the most infectious one now that's ever come along. I just worry I think the summer will probably decrease again, but we might be in for a little bit of a bump over the next few weeks, certainly. So I'm all for keeping it virtual.
The other thing that's helpful is that you can sit there and you can review the documents on your desktop, which I think is really helpful. I can what I've been doing since we've done this, I put the agenda on there and I reference into the town's website and I can look at things. And it's really helpful. Not to mention, if you get older, you get blind and you can just see it right in front of you, as opposed to across the room. Looking at the far end of the fishbowl, it's ridiculous.
Or you can do Google Earth if you need to.
Yeah, there's just so many things that are advantageous.
Erin, I would like to say that I think it'd be great for June if we could stick with virtual, remote, whatever we want to call it. But I also want to say that with my daughter's wedding, I am going to miss a meeting, which is the 14th. So while we're on the topic,
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exciting, but and I couldn't really choose the date based on planning and zoning.
So you said June 16th you're going to
I think I'm looking at the 14th, I think, is our meeting. I'm going to be away for those days, the wedding. Am I looking at the right date?
I think we're the 2nd and the 16th in June.
Oh, sorry. I was looking at our meeting for the 14th. That's fine. You're right. It's the 16th.
Okay. So if Peter, you are our vice chair, correct? And
yeah, but I won't. Oh, Carol, are you talking about the 14th of May?
No, I'm talking about June.
Yeah, I'll be gone.
Sorry. But June 16th is the 3rd. Is it it's the 1st and 3rd? Is that what it is?
Yeah. Yes, Ron, that's right. So then Elliot, you'd have to be in the big seat. Make sure you're here.
So
I
does
think I
that
have a
mean
wedding that I'm going to that weekend.
Are you?
Yeah. I think we're leaving on the 16th.
So if that's the case and we know that we won't be able to get a quorum, then we can cancel the meeting in advance.
That was the next question.
So that is very helpful, Elliot. If you
I just wanted to clarify once again on the quorum number. When we went from 9 to 7, I thought the quorum number went from 5 to 4.
Yeah, that's what they
wouldn't it be
said.
the same situation here? If we're down to 5, shouldn't the quorum be 3, just a majority of actual seated members?
Possibly. Let me double check. For you, Elliot. That could, I thought it was 4 still.
Giselle, were you going to say something?
Actually, you guys cleared it up because I actually am getting married on the 18th and the 16th I wouldn't be
Wow.
available.
Congratulations.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah.
That
Thank you.
18th is going to be a good day.
And just to chime in on the virtual meetings, I personally like them much better. I mean, for what Peter and John mentioned about being able to read the plans much clearer, being able to blow them up on the iPad and see everything instead of looking at them across the room. And furthermore, I got a little bit of a hearing problem, so I'm able to actually stream all this right into my hearing aids, which makes me hear extremely well compared to being in the fishbowl where I don't always pick everything up. So I personally would vote to stay virtual forever, but obviously we can't do that.
At least till December.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I
That's good
think if when two drop off and we're 5 members, then a quorum is 3, I believe. It's not based on 9. It's based on the actual number. So I'm looking at, so 7, it's 4. 6 is 4, but 5 is 3. So we'll be able to lose 2 members crazily and still have a quorum. I don't think that would look great, but I can sure see it happening from time to time if we only have 5 members.
Okay. But we're going to be missing 3 people on the 16th. So
I was only joking about not being there on the 16th.
I actually wrote that down, Elliot.
Oh, you already wrote it. You can make it permanent then.
Ridiculous.
Well, maybe we'll have another seated member by then.
Okay. Well, that's good feedback. Thank you. All right. That's all I had. And,
Likewise.
and we have 2
That's-
hearings at the next meeting. So that would be helpful.
What are the 2 hearings, Aaron?
We have 2 hearings
No,
on,
what are they?
one is a text amendment for the Winter Club property on the Post Road. And the second is
Madison Cinema.
it's a major modification in the downtown Village District for the marquee sign for the cinema.
But we will have.
I may very well be absent at that meeting. I get a new shoulder and I may not be feeling like attending. So I may miss the farewell meeting of Peter and John, but we'll make it up at the Madison Beach Bar some night.
There you go. Thank you.
Wonderful.
The truth is that Peter and I are getting married on the 16th.
Ah, I knew it.
Okay.
June is
I gotta get
busting
divorced
out all
first.
over.
That's enough comments.
Everybody else is getting married.
On that note, could I get a motion for
Strike that from the
adjournment?
minutes.
I will definitely move to adjourn.
A second, please.
Thank
I'll
you.
second that one.
Thank you.